Hi, my name is Beth, and today we're going to be going over the Stanford Achievement Test. First, an overview. So this is a very common test that is used in the United States for measuring student achievement, and it has been used for a very long time. So its first iteration was published in 1923, and we're now in the 10th iteration. There are 13 levels of the test, one that corresponds with each grade in grade school, including kindergarten. So the idea behind this test is that it should provide data that helps measure students' progress in the areas of reading, mathematics, language, spelling, listening, science, and social science. So it really tries to be all-encompassing. The test is divided up into different sections. And today I just wanted to go over areas, maybe the strengths and weaknesses, as well as areas of maybe needed transparency as far as reliability and validity are concerned. So I'm gonna, with this in mind, I'm gonna first move into talking about the theoretical basis of the test. So Pearson, who sells the test to educators, stands by the fact that this test relies on the idea that insight is powerful on all levels, on the individual, the local, the state, and the national. So their thought is that when parents and educators are better able to gain insight into the student's strengths and needs, they're then better able to support not only the individual student, but they're also able to use it as the basis for instituting better local, state, and national policy as well. Um, and I very much appreciate this outlook, especially as Pearson presents it. I was reminded of Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory when you kind of take into account the contextual layers that might be at play in a student's education. So maybe the student doesn't do very well on a test one year, but it seems like they being Pearson really recognize that perhaps it's not just because of the student's intelligence level, for example, but also because of maybe like local state policy that might be at play, teacher pay, et cetera, et cetera. As far as validity and reliability, I was really disappointed that I couldn't find much about the validity and reliability on Pearson's website itself. However, I was able to get information on this. And when I spoke about the need for potentially more transparency, I'm really talking about transparency from Pearson. So I think as far as the reliability, there are two forms of this test, which I'll speak about a little bit later, but they both scored really high. So in the high 0.80, and which shows very good reliability. Individually, the reading section had very good reliability, the language section had good reliability, and the math section also had good reliability. So it really does perform very well as far as reliability is concerned. And then we have validity. So as far as content validity, it was very intentionally designed and very well designed, and therefore has very good content validity. And the correlations as far as convergent validity to other tests that are trying to measure similar things, it performed well. Again, so 70s, 80s, well, 0.70s, 0.80s. And the test validity, that's going to be variable. Test validity really is dependent on whether the school's curriculum matches the test content. And so that's really up to the educator to decide whether it's appropriate to use this test or not. As far as the format and administration, this test is a multiple choice assessment. And unlike a lot of tests, it's arranged in an easy, hard, easy question format. That's intended to motivate students to want to really work through the test and to keep going until completion, whereas a lot of other tests are organized from easy to hard, and once it gets difficult, students can be kind of more apt to give up, potentially. So there are two forms. There's the complete battery and the abbreviated battery. Even though the test allows for flexible testing times, The complete is generally longer, whereas the abbreviated is quite a bit shorter. The idea behind flexible testing times is that students might be able to pause the test and take breaks. As some of the reviews pointed out, it really helps decrease testing anxiety, which can sometimes be a factor in play in these tests. As I noticed before, there are two forms. There's Form A and Form D. They're identical, except for the language test. Form A is a little bit more traditional, and it kind of assesses like language mechanics, whereas Form D takes a more holistic approach to, how is somebody using language in a way that's meaningful? So very much a different approach to reading and mechanics and literacy in general. As far as the population, this is a nationally recognized and normed standardized test. So the initial norms were developed in 2002. They really reflect the K through 12 population, and the spring and fall standardizations. So it was standardized once in spring, once in fall. It included 360,000 students total, and the students were in school districts that were picked using a stratified cluster sampling design. And I'll talk more about that in a second. Special education students were included, and therefore I can conclude that it is appropriate to use this test with grade school students from grades K through 12, including potentially special education students. I will say there's a caveat here. It was difficult to discover what the needs of those special education students were. It may be possible that there are special education students who, for whom the test would not be appropriate. So again, I don't know who those special education students were and what needs they had as far as the norming process. There are Braille and large print versions available. So the Braille version actually had separate norms done. So it can be said that the Braille version was normed, and students who might not be able to see or see very well are able to use the Braille version. It is also available to homeschool students, but again, test validity is only going to hold up if the curriculum matches the content of the test. So you definitely want test validity if you're going to use this, and so you will want to very carefully select something that matches the curriculum. As far as clinical applications, I really saw a few different options kind of, well, I'll say first I kind of saw it on more of like a social justice level. So I think that this test can be a really powerful tool when you're advocating for social justice needs. It kind of has this ecological outlook, and it used stratified cluster sampling design that was really representative of the US population. And so, for example, I thought about a few different scenarios where you might use the SAT-10 as kind of a rationale for some social justice needs. So, for example, if a few schools are doing really well where another school is not, you might use the SAT-10 as a rationale for the reallocation and redistribution of resources and tax dollars. And counselors can certainly advocate for this as part of the school district. You also might see maybe a female teacher, maybe her class is performing really well, but maybe she's underpaid, and the school counselor is able to be involved in advocating for higher or equal pay, again, using the SAT-10 as rationale. As far as in-session applications, I really think that most fundamentally, you're able to identify student areas of needed support. So a counselor might, first of all, they might be able to help with some of the academics, but I think furthermore, maybe they see, a student who was performing really well and one year they're not, and you might be able to check in with that student because maybe there's something more going on For example, maybe they need a clinical mental health referral, or maybe there's something more going on. So it can, I think, identify also like patterns in the child's life. It also might inform, how to best communicate with a student. Oh, are they very language driven? Are they a little bit more math science oriented? It can kind of inform the counselor of what types of things might help form the therapeutic alliance with that student, or um, again, really like what kind of language to use with the student. Should it be more basic? Should it be more advanced? So I think there are a lot of different applications that can come from this that um, are beyond just identifying areas of needed support, although that is certainly needed as well. As far as cultural issues, I really appreciate that the stratified cluster sampling design was used when picking out student school districts. It took into consideration geographic region, SES, urbanicity, ethnicity, and it's reported that it's really within a few percentage points of mirroring the 2000 US figures for these factors. Um, and this was actually normed again in 2018. So it's been pretty accurate to reflect the U.S. population, and that has been really wonderful. Um, and they also, again, there was this Braille version, and there was a separate norming process, and so there has been consideration for disability, although of course there's a lot more potential for other accommodations and other norming processes to be done with those accommodations as well. As far as ethical issues, I went to the ACA Code of Ethics, and I came across a few codes that I think are applicable here. So the first code is code E6A. It says that counselors carefully consider the validity, reliability, psychometric limitations, and appropriateness of the instruments when selecting tests. I think the biggest issue here is that this test is absolutely inappropriate to use if the curriculum does not match the content of the test. If it does not match, you don't have test validity, there's no point in using the test. Code E7A then says that counselors should administer assessments under the same conditions that were established in their standardization. And so to me, this brought up some questions, but not any definitive answers. So questions like, is it appropriate for a counselor to administer this test? Is it appropriate for a counselor to administer this test to one student? It may be possible that the student may require special accommodations for that to be permissible. And in conclusion, I really think this is an excellent battery to utilize when you're measuring students' achievement when used ethically and when used in alignment with the school's curriculum. It has high validity and it has high reliability. There are many clinical applications ranging from social justice to kind of on the ground uses. And as Pearson says, this is really a test that has been used for a very long time. And as some of the reviewers said, there really is a tradition of testing excellence in this test. And I think that holds true after my review. Thank you so much. Bye.